Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experience. My name is Chrism, and we're just going to begin to dive right into it as we normally do. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody in the chat room and everybody who is calling in. And so we begin. One of the subjects that was suggested by a person from me was the challenge to the ego, or the assault on the ego, and how important that can be for Kundalini awakening, especially here in the West. In the West, we are basically educated from very, very early in our development, from the age of infancy on up, to respond to our ego in ways that are self-gratifying. We respond to the ego by getting what it is we want, by having our way, by being first, by being the best competitor, in the many ways that we compete for power and position in the Western societies. And it's very important for us to do that, to win, to survive, to find our place within this society. But when you come into the Kundalini, the tables are turned. It becomes almost like a 180-degree difference. And that is with the assault on the ego. No longer does the ego have the option of having its way all the time. No longer does the ego get to control how a person responds. No longer does the ego get to have the gratification of its desires and of its issues immediately attended to and solved, within the area that the ego would like to see it focused. And so this assault on the ego can be a very, very, very big deal. And I want you to understand that. I want you to really understand that, really begin to grow with that. The assault on the ego is really looking at your levels of capitulation to your desires, capitulation to your fears, and those things that won't fit well within a Kundalini equation. Fears, when they're amplified by Kundalini, become very, very, very strong, terrible type of experiences, and you don't need to have them. They don't need to be there. You can really begin to look at this and change the frequency with which you're thinking about things in a way that allows a person to have a greater level of grace and bliss and happiness and joy within the Kundalini awakening equation. It's very important for people to understand that even though you're no longer being controlled by the ego, you yourself can control the ego. There is a part of you that is not of the egotistic nature. The higher mental functioning self, the higher compassionate emotional functioning self, the higher spiritual self is able to make choices and to combine those choices into a format that begins to retrain the ego along the lines of a pattern of expression that supports nobility, that the noble behaviors like forgiveness and compassion and discipline and just go right on down the line of the different noble behaviors: tolerance, patience, hard work, focus. These are types of behaviors that will serve a person quite well within their Kundalini awakening equation, and I want to really push that into our conversation today. And so I'm looking at, see, we're getting more and more people coming up. It's nice to see everybody. It's good to see Rosemary, Joey, and Elizabeth, and Mary Jean, and Manisha, and we have some guests, and Lana Seeker. For the people in the chat room, I want to make sure that the sound quality is reaching them. So Mary Jean or Manisha and Lana Seeker, maybe you could type and let me know that the sound is coming through okay. I tried to go to the library earlier to see if I could get a conference room because I had some people that wanted to be in the studio audience today. And, it was kind of a last minute thing. And so I started the chat room while I was in the library. It turned out I couldn't use the room because my laptop couldn't get online. And so, I had to move it back here to the ashram. And so looks like the sound is fine. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Jean, and everybody who's checking for me. Thank you, Manisha. So as we begin to reformat the way we respond to our ego. So in many ways, we want to be noticed. We want to be noticed for the gift of grace that we have. We know we have it. We feel it from the inside out. We feel it from within our bones all the way out to the tips of our hair. We know it, but some part of us also wants others to know it and to acknowledge it. And so we will step out into the public forum and we will, kind of dance around or do things that kind of in a gentle way let people know that, yes, indeed, there is something different about that person. And I want you to retrain your ego away from that. You don't need to be noticed purposefully through actions of your ego upon yourself. You don't want to do that. Those are just subtle forms of self-aggrandizement. The Kundalini itself, you'll get noticed by those who are triggered to know. Those people who can see the little kids, the animals, the people that have forms of autism or are challenged in some of the other faculties, they will see it. They will notice it. And some people that are contemporary with you will also see it. But you don't need to advertise it, I guess is what we're saying here. You don't need to go out and advertise it. This is one way of pulling the reins in on the egoic expression. And the assault on the ego is kind of a strong and powerfully dominating term, to put this retraining of the ego into. But, as we go into the stronger ego expressions, such as competition, such as stronger forms of self-aggrandizement, such as vanity, such as jealousy, these types of areas become very, very, very strong, and they can control a person's life, literally. You can live your life through a lens of jealousy, competition, vanity. Literally, these qualities can be so strong and so locked into the egoic expression that they literally control your life. You will not leave the house unless you have all your makeup exactly in place the way your ego likes it. You will not leave the house unless you know you're going to a job where you can excel and you're the number one. And if you're not the number one, then you're striving to be number one. And, you want that sales bonus. You want to, get the greatness into to be noticed by your boss and other people. I mean, it's a very big deal. And I want you to really begin to look at that and to begin to pull that in a little bit. By having Kundalini at all, you have reached a pinnacle of evolution. Now you go from one extremely high mountain peak horizontally to the left or right or forward to another even higher mountain peak that has more, it's a steeper grade. It's, the terrain can be rough. And this is the retraining of the ego. This is the submission to grace. This is the surrender to the Kundalini within you. And very, very, very important to understand that the first thing on the docket is ego control. That's the very first thing on the docket. Before I get too far into this, however, I want to welcome my co-host. This would be Amelia Santara. She's the one that puts on this radio show, and this is her gift of service to the societies and the community. And I just want to welcome her to the program. Hello, Amelia.
Hi, Chrism. Thank you very much. Good to be here. Hi, everyone in the chat room. Hi, everyone on the phones. Hi, everybody in the archives.
Well, and hello to you. Okay. I'm going to put you in the blue, my dear, and I'm going to go straight on over to Brooke Robertson here. I was,
Hi.
Hi, Brooke. We were talking earlier about the assault on the ego, and I kind of want people to hear your take on that. Can you go ahead and give us kind of an idea of how that corresponds with your experience within your Kundalini awakening?
I guess I could talk a little bit about it. I feel like it's not an easy process because you're coming from that level of the ego that is being assaulted, and you're still identified with that. And the reason why it's being assaulted, or the way we think, we perceive it to be an assault, it's actually more like an opening or a breaking open so that the Kundalini can move into. But we perceive it as an assault or something that is, not, comfortable for us because we're still identified with it. We're still using it as part of our identity, which is what the Kundalini is seeking to break down. So it's not a comfortable process. It's been very strenuous for me to, particularly when you have a teacher and you're going through that. Also, the Kundalini is moving you through that at the same time. So, yeah, not comfortable at all.
How do you? I mean, how is this discomfort managed? How do you manage it? What do you do to say make it more palatable for yourself, or to bring in levels of information that allow this refinement of the ego to be more comfortable, I guess is the word I'm looking for. How do you do that? What have you been doing in order to help yourself do that?
Well, I've been receiving instruction from my own Kundalini that that's what this is on occasion. Even though when I do receive the little mini download, it's something that, you kind of question still, or I do anyway. So it's helpful to know because the retraining is so brutal and it's so real and it'll just come upon you when you're least expecting it. Your ego's not prepared for it. That's the best way to have it be done to you. But I think just knowing that that's what this is has helped me. And continuing to understand what surrender is has helped me. If you can surrender through that process, you will sail through that. It's the resistance of the breaking down of the ego or the retraining of the ego that causes all the pain. So that, and I would say surrender.
What do you use as a segue for surrender? I mean, we both know that if a person
you mean like a mantra?
Well, no, okay, yeah, like say a mantra or some other kind of inner or outward tool or thought or instruction. What have you found in your experience to be the most effective way to get past the ego resistance to this refinement?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different things. Devotion is one. Mantra is one. Giving and selfless service to others is one. Not being so overly obsessed with your process all the time is one. I don't know. No,
you do know. I think you answered that very well. Very, very well.
Yeah.
And so inside of this assault on the ego, have you found a level of constant change that has kind of morphed into a new level of expression that is consistent, like it's a consistently different way of expressing your life without, say, the ego being so much in charge? Have you found anything like that happening for you?
I think I have. It's hard for me to articulate it because I'm inside of me and I'm inside of it, the process. I'm sure people that are around me could probably notice it more, but I feel like, yes, there's a level of serenity that's taken hold that wasn't there before in the midst of this type of retraining. So I think those things are indicative to me of progress or of a different type of expression. Yeah.
Do you feel that the ayahuasca helped you in these areas at all?
In the area of surrender and ego refinement?
Yeah.
That is a good question because that could go either way with a person with ayahuasca, because I can see how a person can go through those ceremonies and really have a big ego at the end of it. But I think for me it has helped. I don't really know exactly how it would have helped. I think for certain it's boosted and bumped up my Kundalini for sure, which when doing the work that I'm doing would bring up the areas of the ego that need to be looked at and refined. So there's that going on. It's kind of like the Kundalini comes in and pushes these areas or highlights them for me. So in that way, yes, I would say yes.
Okay. Now, I at the beginning of the program, I was talking about, how society, is basically run off of the ego. And I was wondering, do you ever get reminded by the ego or the egoic expression that, oh my gosh, you have to get up and go to work and earn a living, or you know what I mean? The type of old, the type of life that the ego
old programming.
Programming. Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You ever find
every day.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Every day. Well, in the beginning,
Wow.
It was every day. It's less and less now that I'm becoming a little bit more secure in the process of being lifted out of those programs. I mean, when we're lifted out of that programming, we have to be lifted out of that programming. And sometimes we have to be lifted out of some of the aspects of society that takes or participates in those programs. So for me, that's kind of been going on. You stand out and you kind of look from the outside in and you're going, oh, yeah, I remember that. Or, yeah. But as I become more stabilized in the process that I'm going through, those things aren't so much of a pull, but, yeah, of course. And, we live in a society that's it's all over the place. It'd be very difficult to, it's everywhere. You walk out your front door. We're trained. All the education system, everything is training us to prop up the ego. It seems it's all based on that. So
even the religious systems, the commercial systems,
everything. Yes,
everything is built to build up the ego. Yeah, well, I think in my interactions with you, I do definitely see some very positive changes taking place with regards to ego refinement with you, and I just want to really compliment you on this level of work that you're doing. It is not easy. Everybody listening in the archives and on telephones and in the chat room, Brooke Robertson basically answered the call of her ego, and she moved out here to begin a 24/7 instruction on many of the different ego refinement structures. And she has been going gangbusters ever since she got here. So, I want to compliment you publicly, on your progress with that, Brooke. And I want to encourage you to continue to make, the amazing process and progress that you're making here with your Kundalini awakening.
Thank you.
Well, it really gives, it gives people a very strong level of insight to hear it from other people as well. You're one of those people that can stream your Shakti, and that's a very, very, very rare quality. And so, I just want a pleasure to have you on the program. And, I'm going to leave you red because I want to bring Elizabeth and Laranya on board here. And hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Laranya. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Chrism. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay. Now, Elizabeth, does Laranya have anything to say on this, or does she have something in general that she'd like to bring out? Laranya, everybody, is Elizabeth's Kundalini, which has come to her as a spider, and is in a fairly strong level of communication with Elizabeth. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
She was saying something to me earlier, but right now I just wanted to say something about about what the program's about, what Brooke was just talking about and stuff. And I just wanted to, we're all different, but I have been in the breaking down of the ego thing for, it feels like forever. I don't know that I've ever been allowed to have any type of self-aggrandizement because the second I do, everything's taken away. Everything goes. Like if I were to stand up and say, "Oh, I'm Kundalini awakened," and this or that, that would, you wouldn't. But if you were, I would be slapped down so fast and so hard. I have learned to surrender. I don't even go. I'm not saying that I don't have ego issues or anything. I'm just saying I've been kept down to the point where I don't even notice it anymore. And Chrism, you said to me once, "Wow, Elizabeth, your friends don't even know who you are. They don't seem to recognize that you have Kundalini or that you're any different, that you know what I mean." And I said, "Oh, I know. Yeah, that's exactly how my life goes. My work, my house, my friends, I'm just never allowed that. And when I am allowed that, it's so very clear and obvious that it's Shakti, not me, that it's easy for me to just say that thank you, but it's not me, clearly, in those moments. And I think after my frag and coming into this group and the people in KAS, it's the first time where I'm allowed to do something. My Kundalini allows me to do something for others, but literally it feels weird to me. Like, why is that happening? Chrism will say, "We'll post this on the groups." I'm like, no, because I'm worried that the second I do that, but because it's about the Kundalini, for other people, not for me, not about me, but yet I have a pod of sorts to travel with now, which is what Aranya, I'm trying to segue into what Aranya was talking to me about earlier today, how important it is to travel in pods and I thought that's so cool because she related it to dolphins and to other creatures that travel in pods. They protect each other. They rally around each other. There is no jealousy or any of that because they're all working for the same purpose, for the same
like the
end,
orcas. The orcas travel in pods.
Yeah. And so she was just making that to me. She was just saying to me, you have a pod to travel in now. You're not alone. You have other people that are Kundalini awakened. It doesn't matter if no one in your town, no one in your work, no one in the school, it doesn't matter because you have now something I never had. And it's so valuable to me because we all have a pod to travel with now.
Well, I want to say I'm appreciative of everybody in this pod, and even this on-air radio show is a kind of pod. I mean, I don't get to see Alana Seeker so much outside of this pod, or Mary Jean, or even Santara as much, or Joey as much. I mean, it's this little Blog Talk Radio thing is kind of a little pod as well, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who joins us.
Very true.
And what does Ladanya feel about the assault on the ego and how important that is? If she does have anything to say about that.
Oh, it's super important, and it just is a matter of refinement, right? Just over and over again, working out the kinks. You're, breaking down patterns, learning why you react certain ways. I mean, it's
breaking
like
down
you said,
patterns of like competition, patterns of fear,
yes.
patterns of greed,
Yes.
patterns of jealousy, patterns of vanity, patterns of sloth.
Yes. And
different patterns
lessons in your path for each and every one of those things, and let you work through it till you realize, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. I never had to do that, and things like that. So yeah, it's hugely important.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and many thanks to Loranya as well.
You.
And I think it is very good to realize that we are no longer alone. We do have that pod. We do have we have a micro society of Kundalini awakening people that have very similar symptoms, and they're in the assault on the ego, that are making those changes, those patterning changes, and beginning to repattern along the lines of a divine expression while still within the flesh body. And I just think that's what this really is all about. That is where I feel that everybody is being guided in their own unique fashion towards, is to be able to express divinity through a physical mechanism. And much like you and Brooke are both doing it. So I just want to say thank you to the both of you. And is there anything that either of you would like to add to that?
No, I just wanted to add a little bit about what she was saying in the beginning there about how Kundalini doesn't really let her have any outer ego exposure of to where her ego could sort of run away with it and say, oh, look at me, I'm doing, I can relate to that. I'm having the same thing. And the Kundalini will do that. It'll break you down and take some of those things away from you that you were perhaps using to boost yourself up in those ways, and that you're identified with those things. It feels like an assault on the ego. So yeah, I just wanted to say, Elizabeth, yes, I can totally relate to what you were saying there about how you're not allowed to have any self-aggrandizement in that way.
Yeah.
Get slapped
every time.
Keep that
every
mouthpiece.
single time.
Keep that mouthpiece close to the phone, would you, Brooke? You
Oh,
faded
sorry.
out there.
I was just
yeah.
every single time.
Well, thank you both of you for giving us your take on this. It's a very important subject, I feel. To really 24/7 come into levels of balancing that ego, kind of working away from all of the programming that you received, the past, however many years you've been alive, and really beginning to embrace a new level of egoic reformatting in your Kundalini awakening life. So thank you, both of you. And
Thank you.
Putting you here, yes, you're very welcome. Putting you in the blue, Elizabeth, and Brooke into the blue. Thank you, both of you. Once again, I'm going to ask Santara. Also, Santara, what do you have to say about this?
Well, Chrism, similar to what the Elizabeth and Brooke would have said, I suppose I'm going through a very specific assault at the moment, and I would find it too difficult to speak about that just now. But one of the things, it's a bit like what Brooke said earlier. Sometimes, when you're in it, it can be very difficult to see exactly or articulate what's happening. But one of the things, when you began at the beginning of the program, you were saying how what were you saying? You were saying how we can make choices through our higher self. That our higher self can see choices that can retrain the ego, I think. And
yeah.
One of the things, and I think that's true. And I know that, like, for example, if I'm to look back over my process, let's say my higher self would have wanted to be of service. But my God, Kundalini pushed that much, much further than my higher self or, would even have intended. Or the same with cleaning up my diet. We'll say my higher self, the Kundalini comes in somehow much more and much stronger than I could have known even through my higher self, I feel.
Oh, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, the Kundalini,
so,
the Kundalini does that. It has more
for
information.
example,
Go ahead.
My higher self, say, would have known for many years you don't judge people, you're tolerant. And so I would want to be that way. So I would go about doing that through lots of different ways. But then my Kundalini comes in, and what does she do? She sets up situations where that is tested and tested and tested in my ego, in ways that I couldn't possibly imagine. And so that's somehow part of the ways that the Kundalini, I feel, can, open up that part of my ego and push me to go further and further and further. The same with all aspects,
Absolutely.
And I think that can be really hard, Chrism. And it doesn't stop. I mean, for me anyway, she goes through phases, and I work and, works me and pushes me. And assault is an appropriate word. Like sometimes it's an assault, and then it moves into a breaking open. And then I begin to process that and work with that. And, if I was to look at fear came up for me again recently. Fear, the way fear can be a good thing. It's typical in our lives. It keeps us out of danger, blah, 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 and all of that. Ego, for me, can project fear when it sees danger to itself. And then when the Kundalini begins to give me things, we'll say physically, that would initiate a fear response, it can be very debilitating in a Kundalini context because it can stop my growth. It just goes boom. If I stay in fear, I am working with the ego. I'm not trusting. I'm not going as the Kundalini is wanting me to go. And she'll amplify and amplify and amplify, and that's how it's like an assault on my ego, because there's no let up until I make the choice to just completely surrender, to be submissive, to fall into that place of serenity that is like totally contradictory to what my ego wants. And I have to stop now, Chrism.
Oh no, you're absolutely correct. I resonate 100% with that, and it is it's definitely a challenge, but it has to be done. It has to be done.
Yeah.
You will not be allowed to have the amazing abilities and powers of the Kundalini without having your ego, worked on in very, very strong ways. And it's part of the deal. It's part of the new person that's developing, the new psychological, emotional, mental framework. This needs to come through. It looks like people are losing the sound. Can everybody hear us right now? Hello. Let's get some typing on here. Let's see here. Can you hear the sound? So I'm just going to ask the question again. Everybody, yes. Have it back now. Okay. You may have to refresh your screen every now and again. I don't know how that works. But thank you. Thank you for... Oh, Mary Jean doesn't have it yet. Refresh, Mary Jean. Refresh. Boom. Okay. All right. Well, some of the people are back in the sound area. I'm trying to get Mary Jean back in there. Okay. So yes, sorry. I wonder how much you missed. Yeah. So it's, this assault on the egos is a very, very big subject. It's a very, very healthy subject too. One of the assaults on the ego is that the Kundalini will make us so amazingly sensitive to other people, to other people's emotions, to other people's issues, to other people's emotional responses to us or to an animal or to a pet. Kundalini can really, really make us super sensitive to compassionate issues like issues of say animal cruelty or cruelty against other human beings, things of that nature. And I want to bring Brooke back in with this aspect of it. Hello, Brooke.
Oh.
Have you found the Kundalini really pushing the buttons for any kind of a super excitation of the emotional body when it comes to animals or people or things of that nature?
Yes, and to all you out there who are listening, you're not crazy. You're not crazy that you overly obsessively love the animals. No, yeah, I have that with all animals. But when you were just speaking there, I was thinking of that incident that happened last night with that friend who, can I just explain that story?
Sure.
Because it relates. Because I was so impacted by her reaction, and I couldn't believe how impacted I was by this. She reached out to me and she needed help, and this is a friend that I've known for many, 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 many years. And we did a healing on her, and it was very beautiful. And then a few weeks later,
you got to back up. Why did we do a healing? What did she?
Well,
she contacted you for help, issues. Right? She asked.
Yeah, she asked me for healing with the entity issues that she's having, and so we did that for her. And is that enough detail on that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so a couple weeks later, she ends up sort of, I don't even know how to explain it. I think she had a major reaction to this healing, and it all landed back on me in my face, and an extreme accusations towards me, which were, with my Kundalini and where I am right now, it was so painful. And I just, I think you just posted something about that today, Chrism, on Facebook on the big page, where you were saying you're often what you give is not always received by people, and it can come back at you, and often does. But this came back at me, and I'm so sensitive. I couldn't believe it. It just hurt me so bad. Oh.
Yeah. This is part of that assault on the ego as well.
Where I think the next person would have just said, whatever. She's having a bad moment, and she, it's her issue. But that isn't how I received it, and that isn't how I digested that and interpreted it. I mean, everything is so completely amplified with this going on that, it's definitely amplified. So that
and it makes you super, super sensitive to the feelings of others, and your compassion, empathic compassion, goes way out and above what it would normally be. And I think people need to understand that, because it can affect how their relations with others go. And this is where I feel some of the noble behaviors really can come in and kind of save the day, because as Amelia was saying earlier, you don't get to judge. You don't get to make judgments about this or that. I mean, Kundalini can be very, very, very strict that way. And yet, here we are, we're in this super, super sensitive state. And so it's where the rubber meets the road, really. I mean, what you just described, Brooke, is a perfect example of how we can be so super sensitized that, the ego will latch onto that sensitivity and begin to try to drive that sensitivity into areas of anguish or areas of resentment, bitterness, angry, whatever it is, but rarely does it drive it into tolerance and forgiveness. Am I right?
Right, which is why the Kundalini is having this, why this situation is actually occurring for you in any way. And, with me last night, with my reaction to it was so, I was so, I got the worst headache I've had in a long time. Now, I know myself enough in this process that I get that headache when I have this type of reaction. I know the headache. It's almost like a little mini punishment, but it hurts so, so bad. And it was due to my emotional reaction. So when I had to go into deep levels of forgiveness and territory that I didn't really even know I didn't even know how to go there. I had to forgive it. When I started to forgive, it would release. But I got to tell you, that was hard. That was not something that I'm familiar with doing, like that level of forgiveness in order to release that headache. But that's what ultimately had to happen. Tolerance, forgiveness, love, understanding, all of those things had to go in order for that headache to subside and to release. Yeah, so it's a teaching for me on so many levels. But to have those attitudes in a situation like that primarily.
The body is being literally transformed, and the energetic anatomy is one of the first areas of the body that's being transformed, and the physical will follow the energetic. And, when you have these raw nerve endings now that has been caused by the transformation from the Kundalini, and you receive that kind of an education, wow, it can really, really, really inflict levels of pain upon the physical structure of the individual. And so, once again, as Brooke was mentioning, these noble qualities, these noble behaviors like tolerance and forgiveness and gratitude and patience and honesty and truth and non-judgmentalism, things of that nature. This can really, really serve as a way of helping you not fall into these areas of physical pain. And she will teach us this way. She knows, the Sacred Mother, the Sacred Kundalini knows that your nerve endings are in the raw state right now. So what does she do? Well, she gives you a reason to either go into extreme anxieties or extreme, levels of behavior that will expose those raw nerve endings into a hurtful expression, or, you after a while, after you learn some of the harder lessons, you can take the easier route and just straight up go into tolerance, straight up go into forgiveness, straight up go into compassion and non-judgmentalism, and just learn that, hey, okay, this is that person's path. What they're saying is not the truth of me. Therefore, I don't have to take offense, or I don't have to get into anger. I don't have to get into any kind of an expression that's going to hurt me in my process. You never hurt permanently, though. This is something that you'll always be able to heal from. And like you did, Brooke, you started to go into forgiveness and tolerance, and these qualities will begin to close up that healing. How's that headache now?
Oh, it's passed. It's passed.
Oh, good.
But,
good.
Yeah, finally. But I wanted to say, you say, we get to the point where we just immediately go into the noble qualities. Well, it's interesting because it's almost like the ego's addicted to the reaction. Like, oh, she hurt me, and look at that, how bad that was, what she said to me, and there's like sometimes there's an enjoyment in that, and there really needs to not be for me, like get out of that as quickly as possible. Don't even go there.
Well, we're so used to going into a victim type of format, oh, she hit me, therefore, I'm feeling hurt, therefore, that's unfair, therefore, this should not be happening, therefore, I should lash out at her right back so she can hurt, and we're kind of in a way.
She said.
Yeah. We're trained. We're trained.
It's so bad.
So well, I want to thank you once again for your input on this. I think it's very important for people to hear it and to really begin to express themselves within the noble qualities in a more constant 24/7 type of expression. And how does the devotion have any effect for you on this at all in these areas?
Yes, because it can act as the immediate bridge that you go to release into those qualities, because that's what devotion is. It is those qualities. So the sticking point for me sometimes is that you really have to, it's like a dog with a bone. Got to let it go and go into the devotion and release. But yeah, the devotion will, of course, help. Because I want to thank you.
Devotion I feel has a very, like you say, an immediate quality. When you insert love into an equation that is about hurt, that is about, like, say, a deprivation of love or a deprivation of respect or a deprivation of consideration, when you insert love into that lack or into that space where it isn't, we wouldn't perceive it there, it can act as an immediate level of reconciliation on the emotional body. So, well, thank you, Brooke.
Thank you
very much. Put you into the blue, and I also want to thank you, Santara, for bringing up some of these issues as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I love what Brooke said there, actually, about the ego and about devotion, Chrism, being an immediate bridge. I think that's the word she used. It so is. Without devotion for me is like devotion in motion. In the mundane life, we sometimes think devotion is something that we do, and we do, of course, at very specific times, but it is bringing that into, those situations that Brooke was talking about there that happen to us all, bringing devotion into that moment, almost like a reflex response. It just can have an immediate access then into those other things you were talking about, like the tolerance and the forgiveness. It's so powerful. And I know that, for me, if I didn't have that, and it's not that I always do it, Chrism, but the times that I do it, it's a saving grace. It is such a saving grace.
Absolutely, and you can really feel that. Because with the Kundalini coming on so strong, that super sensitivity about how other people affect you can be a fairly constant stream of emotional input into you. If you have a significant other, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a child, a workmate. If they're not treating you fairly, or they treat you in some way unfairly, that can really become a big deal for a person within the Kundalini awakening. That can really cause a person to dramatically, through an egoic outburst, dramatically change the quality and the stability of close relationships. And so it's so important for people to understand this and to not lash out and to not misunderstand what the outside person may be inadvertently doing to the Kundalini active individual. The person before they're Kundalini activated perhaps would have handled it just fine, like Brooke said. It's like, oh yeah, no big deal, whatever. I can deal with that. But now that the Kundalini is there and this huge level of emotional amplification is in place and is expressing in that amplified fashion, well, it's kind of like a speedboat. When a speedboat is going 100, 120 miles an hour, the smallest branch or a twig can cause that boat to capsize and to basically fragment. And it's the same or similar way with the Kundalini here when we're moving so fast within our emotional context and the emotional refinement processes that are being given into the ego, whether the person wants it or not. This is what's occurring. We have to be very, very, very cognizant of how we interpret the assault on our ego from those forces outside of ourself or outside of our ego. Now, the Kundalini will typically always set us up, like you mentioned, Sankara. It'll always set us up for a test, you know. And I want to encourage people to look at these equations that begin to express themselves in the life of an individual as a test. Don't allow yourself to overreact to a given situation that a close personal friend relationship or you know, another person, a close person in your life, may inadvertently push onto you, or even more importantly, if they do it on purpose. I think Brooke was describing her friend that purposefully, made these statements about Brooke and the healing and things of that nature. This is not accidental. This was on purpose, and that can be seen by the ego in its extreme refinement process, where the emotions are very, very, very hot and very, very, very raw. That can be seen as an attack. And then, of course, we have the whole attack response. She hit me, I'll hit you, and it's like Donald Trump says, if somebody hits you, well, you hit them back even harder, and then you hit all their members of their family too, or something like that.
And what I find, Chrism, if I can use that example because it's come up, say, in the context of things that have happened to me, similar. What happens is, if my ego perceives it as being unjust, because let's say I was doing my best, I was trying to be helpful, and it comes back at me, and my ego then latches onto the injustice and then amplifies that, and I can run with that, and my heart can break when I don't recognize what's happening, when I don't see that there is an opportunity there for me, that my ego is driving that. That can be so painful. But when and you have taught me this, Chrism, for me not to, it's not that I always do, but for me at least to become more aware of that aspect of it, how ego latches on, and if it can find a good enough excuse that it's not just tit for tat, if it can find, with me anyway, that it can legitimize my heartbreak, we'll say, or my upsetness by saying, it's so unjust, I did it. That sort of thing. My heart
that's true. That's true.
Well, then, yeah,
it can find areas of legitimacy. It will create legitimacy for it.
Exactly.
Even though there is none for it, the ego will create it. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Exactly.
Amelia. Yeah, it will create legitimacy, and so you really need to get a strong grip on the truth of the matter and be able to look at your actions honestly. And so, of course, honesty is one of this other noble quality that is so important for our levels of discernment, for self-discernment. And so when we're in the process of, like, perhaps we have a good friend who doesn't really understand that we have Kundalini going on, and they say some off-the-cuff thing, and wham, it hits us so hard. It can bring you to tears, and you just got to take a step back and realize that, hey, this person does not know what's happening to me. I, therefore, have I cannot depend on them for compassion. I have to take hold of myself and not allow my ego to go into this tantrum of emotional expression because this person said something that was ignorant of what it is I'm experiencing. And because the opportunity is there. As you mentioned, Santara, to have the ego build up a legitimate case against whoever said whatever, and begin to reformat that relationship based upon that hurt that has now been legitimized by the ego. And this is how the ego can really rip up relationships and destroy years-long friendships based upon the lack of an understanding of a person that is not awake yet, making commentary or having an effect upon a person who is inside of the awakening process. It's very important for people to honestly look at themselves and honestly realize that, hey, this guy or this gal, they're not awakened. They don't know that what they said just really skewered my heart and ripped it out and put it under the into the garbage disposal. It's just it's not that way for them because they don't understand. And we have to take the time and have the self-honesty to be able to discern that, hey, they didn't mean it that way. They don't know really what they're talking about. I need to forgive them, or at least I need to tolerate them, especially if it's a work partner, somebody that you have to work with over and over. You don't live with them. You don't, you're not in love with them. Maybe you're friends with them, but they don't know that you're having, Kundalini awakening at the time, and which is a gift, because if they did know, they'd probably, it might not go so well for you. So it's important for people to understand that the awakening community needs to understand that the onus of responsibility is on the Kundalini awakening person, not the mundane individual. The onus of responsibility, yes, is on the Kundalini person, not on the person that is unawakened and making all these judgments and making all these mistakes. We have to raise ourselves beyond the mundane emotional expression of revenge, of the hit back, of the grudge, of you name it. We have to raise ourselves above that. And within that level of raising, we begin to strengthen the emotional neural responses that are triggered when the Kundalini sets us up with a test like this. This is why it can be good to intentionally surround yourself with people that might be a little more emotionally stimulative for your process. Hey, people at work, or maybe people you might be seeing in a romantic situation. As long as you can always take a step back and go, hey, I'm awakening, they're not. This allows me to flex my exalted emotional muscles. This allows me to develop my compassion, my empathy, my tolerance, my forgiveness. I'm gonna pursue this. I'm not going to shut these people out because they're not awakening and they don't understand me. I'm going to invite them in because most of the world is not awakening. And for me to shut everybody out because they're forcing me to develop these exalted emotional skill sets, well, that's counterproductive, from a Kundalini awakening standpoint. And so you really want to develop those muscles and develop those understandings and develop those changes in your response to the unawakened egoistic judgments or condemnations or critiques or any of the things that they may do or say or express that would be counterproductive, for even the unawakened, but even more so for the awakening. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you very much. I'm gonna move it on over here to Miss Rosemary. Hi, Rosemary.
Hi there, Chrism.
What's your take on all this, my dear?
Well, I was sitting listening in a car lot here because I'm on the road, and I just got off. I'm very been thinking since you said, and I picked up, dialed in that this is what it was. And I was looking, I'm not in the same place where Elizabeth and Brooke are, but I've been observing my ego, how worried I get, and concerned, and frustrated, and confused, and I can watch it happening, and hard to let go. And there's a whole piece of my growing up that is strong in doing what is the right thing to do, and that means serving you. That means a big part of the work that I'm doing is it's a serious thing for me, and it's not because I don't have anything else to do or I don't want to do anything else. It's just that it's there as like given to me to do this and make sure that I'm doing it right and making the right choices. And
well, I think that's important.
All of that.
I think that's a level of competency that the Kundalini will push upon a person. She knows that you have the ability to go above and beyond what mundane perfectionism is, and that striving will always be there. And I think that's a good thing. I think the caveat to that would be to not judge yourself harshly if it doesn't go the way you may have developed an ego expectation to have it to go.
Mhm. And it's a great help to have other people involved, as Joey and Katie are now, and that
goes back to what Elizabeth said about the pods. You have the Minnesota pod.
Yes.
I love that. The Minnesota pod, Kundalini pod.
It's amazing how more powerful what I do and we do is. It's amazing how more powerful it is in this community. The whole idea of community together. I mean, I don't have the words for it, but you know what I mean.
I do indeed. And thank you.
And deep, profound gratitude in my heart for all of this. And you know me, and you know my heart. You know you could talk about my ego with more accuracy probably than I do, and all of that. And it's very touching for me, and I'm very pleased to be doing this work, this life that I have.
And it's an extreme gift of grace that you give into the people around you and into this world in general, Rosemary. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And
Thank you for the privilege.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that came to me as Rosemary was speaking was the analogy of a bicycle. And the unawakened people have basically a 3-speed. They've got first, second, and third gears on their bicycle, whereas the Kundalini person, certainly within some aspects of their development, have like a 24-speed bicycle. And yet we have to learn how to use each one of those gears in a very specific way within very specific situations. And having the ability to self-discern and to constantly observe how we respond within different extreme emotional circumstances gives us that level of understanding of how we would use what gear on our 24-speed bicycle, our Kundalini bicycle. And I think that's very important for people to understand, that you don't allow yourself to get carried away by the ego as it responds to an emotionally charged situation. And it's easy to do. It's easy to let yourself get carried away because you feel this immediate rising tide of anger, or rising tide of rage, or rising tide of sadness, or rising tide of sympathy or empathy, or whatever the emotional might be. You can really, really, really feel it when you have the Kundalini taking its expression through you. And so it's very important for people to understand that even when you're in your pod, in your pod of Kundalini people, and you're like Rosemary mentioned, you're with Katie, or you're with Joey, or any of the other folks there in the Minnesota Kundalini community, you're all inside of that emotional expression. So you must always take that in consideration when you're communicating with each other. And do your best to be as respectful and kind and considerate in your communications with people as you can be. And that goes for all of us, inside of the Kundalini Awakening Systems groups. We must always be very, very, very cognizant of how our words fall on people. Now, you look at Chrism, and Chrism is, Chrism can be very, very, very abrupt and very, very, very direct in some of the responses that he'll give to certain questions, or if there's a person who's just kind of messing around, or a person who is purposefully not allowing themselves to partake of the different structures of education within those groups. I can get very, very, very strict and very, very, very to the point. And, this is also part of the deal. This is also part of the whole spare the rod thing. I think in many ways it's very, very helpful to have teachers that are very, very strict and repeatedly so in certain areas that allow the other Kundalini Awakening people to maybe follow suit, to maybe understand why, to be able to determine and to discern why a given response is given in a specific way, and I think this can be very, very helpful to the Kundalini environment at large, because the general public is going to twist and turn and torque and burn and trash wherever it can go, because once again, as we discussed in the earlier part of the program, the general public is controlled by their ego totally and completely controlled by their ego, unless you have kids. If you have children, the children kind of show you what maybe you shouldn't be doing, and if you don't have kids, well, then you don't really know. And so when you're looking at, your own 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, you know how not to be. And so in that way, among many other ways, children are such great teachers for their parents, because it helps their parents stabilize within a greater level of maturation in their emotional body. And most people really don't mature very well in their emotional bodies. And then when you add the Kundalini into the mix and everything is being amplified and accelerated, you really get a great crash course in emotional maturation. And she will teach you that way. And if you have a teacher that is strict, like I can be sometimes, they will teach you in such ways, and they will not always show compassion or consideration for your feelings, especially if you're, expressing feelings of victimhood or oh, poor me, or oh, it's too hard, I can't do that, or oh my gosh, any kind of the that will revolve around not wanting to do the work. Things can get a little tense sometimes. And I'm going to go over here to Noranya and see if Noranya has anything to say about that. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Did she say anything about that? You got anything to say about those qualities?
No, just just so much good information, but no, nothing right now.
Ah, very good, very good. My dear, I'll put you in the blue, and we'll go over here to Brooke. What do you think, Brooke? Anything to say about that? Ah, she must be doing something else. I'll put her in the blue. And so, yeah. I think this assault on the ego is very important for people to understand that it is extremely necessary. And remember, as I said before, it is the responsibility of the Kundalini awakened more than it is for those who are sleeping. You have to find levels of control for yourself. You can't depend on it from an unawakened person, because they don't know what you're going through. They do not know what you're going through. They cannot even relate. They'll sit there and say, oh yes, you have Kundalini, and oh, I understand. But they don't understand. They do not understand. They can say they understand till the cows come home, but they don't understand, because it's not happening to them. And it is such a huge event, tenuous event. It's like an atomic explosion inside a person's body in slow motion. And in very specific bodies of the human expression, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, the psychological body, the physical body. You know, you've got 5 nuclear bombs going off in extremely slow motion, amplifying a person's egoic natures. And so your unawakened friend will say, oh, I understand, but they don't understand. And you can't expect them to. And so you must mitigate that within yourself first. And, you know, and a lot of it depends on how you want to mitigate that will determine, you know, what level of compassion or empathy or consideration that you show for them and their lack of understanding in what it is you're going through. And in many ways, it's best not to even mention it to them. You know, you don't need to tell everybody, oh, I'm Kundalini awakened. I'm very, very, very sensitive. No. You don't want to do that. That's just driving attention your way. And it's very important for you to understand that it's not a necessary thing for you. The most necessary thing for you is to honor the marriage that is occurring within you first. And you let that marriage of Shakti and Shiva determine what the outer you is going to express in the way that given emotional response would have you express. All right, so I think I'm just about where I want to be with that. Now I'm going to go over to Amelia, and I'm going to ask if she has any questions. Amelia.
Yes, Chrism. Yes, I do. And I'm getting them now. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you ready for me to go?
Indeed.
Okay. There are a few questions here. I'm going to ask 3 together, if I may, but stop me if you wish as I'm going ahead. How do you know if what we are experiencing or detoxing with the Kundalini is karma, or if it is choices we've made in the past that could have been different? Meaning, I know we detox from this life and past lives, but is there a self-correction that could be made with our choices now? Or does it matter since our choices are karma and we just forgive it, whatever the Kundalini brings up?
That's so jumbled.
Yeah, I'm going to read the first one again. May I, Chrism?
Well, with regards, I'll deal with the first one first here. How do we know if the detox that we're going through is of a karmic nature? And it doesn't matter whether you know if it's karma or not. The fact that it is happening at all is all that matters. Your knowledge of your karma does not matter. Your response to the challenges and the situations that are developing within your life from your Kundalini is what matters. And this is how you mitigate that through the noble behaviors, through kindness, consideration, selfless service, honesty, trust, surrender, forgiveness, tolerance, gratitude. These are the tools that a Kundalini awakening person must pursue as the Kundalini brings its tests and tribulations upon an individual. It doesn't matter if it's karma or not. Over.
Thank you. Next question. Are we able to affect our karma by using the safeties for the rest of our Kundalini life now for our next possible Kundalini life?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And you know how I feel about absolutism. But here I will say yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chrism, what is your perspective on this quote? Quote, whoever commits a sin without intention is worthy of forgiveness. And it's from Ayman Ali.
Well, anybody who commits a sin, whether they do it intentionally or not, is worthy of forgiveness. Everyone within any context is worthy of forgiveness. We are all human souls. We are all human souls inside of a physical body. We are all in various stages inside the veil of forgetfulness with our limitations and with the karma that has either strengthened us through the gifts of karma or is strengthening us through the limitations of karma. So everybody is worthy of forgiveness. Remember, we are expressions of the divine. And we, through that divine expression, we can give forgiveness for the most horrible, horrible atrocities. It doesn't mean we support the atrocity. It just means that forgiveness can be given. When you start looking at it from a macro perspective, meaning, I'll just give a macro perspective right now, meaning all of the different tyrants and dictators and torturers of all time, in recorded history, everybody from Nero, Emperor Nero of Rome, to Kublai Khan of China, to Hitler of Germany. All of these terrible, terrible, challenged people who committed some very, very strong atrocities, they're still human. They still started out as innocent little kids. And tell me if innocent little kids are worthy of forgiveness. They are. They are indeed. And some adults are just innocent little kids expressing from their ego in adult bodies. You look at this President-elect Trump. He's a great example of that. A man baby. And and whatever is going to happen with his presidency on the world, he's still a human being that started out as a child, a pure expression of divine evolution on this world. And so therefore, yes, is worthy of forgiveness. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. What are your thoughts on codependency in a Kundalini context?
Say again?
What are your thoughts on codependency in a Kundalini context?
Codependency is an overdependence upon another person for a specific type of thing. Now, if that person is a teacher, then it's not a codependency equation. It's an educational equation. And that teacher should be eventually teaching a student to be free of that dependency. If it's within a relationship, then it's an agreed upon set of dependencies that interrelate within the two people inside of the relationship. Somebody may be physically stronger than the other, so they'll depend on that other person to lift that heavy piece of wood, or to lift that, to do the things that require exceptional strength. And maybe the other person has qualities that the person with the exceptional strength would depend upon that person, being good in counting, or being good with different skill sets. And so, on the one hand, I think codependency, if it's done in a fashion that is balanced and secure, is just fine. It's fine. It's how two people can really begin to interweave their skill sets and depend upon one another for a skill set that they may not particularly have. Now, if it's a codependency faction within a relationship that is constantly one being dependent upon another, with a constant drain of energy, or a drain of finances, or a drain of whatever, then that can be a bit unhealthy. Typically, I think that's what people refer to when they're talking about codependency issues. And there, within a Kundalini, the Kundalini will straighten that right out. that relationship will end, and that person, can be dependent on whoever they want for a certain amount of time, and the Kundalini will maybe not allow that dependency to develop, but it will end. It will end, and codependency, in many ways, is not a bad thing. In many ways, it is a limiting factor, and so as far as I'm concerned, it can go either way. It has to really depend on the situation. Over.
Okay, thank you, Chrism. And the next questions are from the groups. Morning all, just wondered if anyone experiences a heavy scented smell coming down with grace. It is absolutely beautiful. Have been looking after Mom who has cancer and she can smell it too. Can almost taste it. It comes with grace. It's like being in a garden full of gardenias.
Isn't that what we experienced in Lourdes, France there, Amelia?
Yes, it is.
Remember that?
Indeed, lilacs. Yeah,
lilacs.
Of course.
Lilacs where there were absolutely no flowers anywhere. Yeah, it was all concrete and stone, and we smelled lilacs all over the place. It was extremely beautiful, and this is a sign of grace. This is one of the Kundalini awakening symptoms of smelling or experiencing, having sensorial experience where the legitimacy of that experience should not be within scientific or science physics type of attributes. So, like tasting an orange when you haven't eaten one, or smelling incense where none is burning, or smelling lilacs where none are growing. See, these are ascended types of sensorial input, and it's a real deal. It comes with the Kundalini for sure. Roses often happen that way as well. Roses, incense is common, and it's just what psychoanalysts might call a hallucination. It would be a sensori, the hallucination of the nose. They have a word for that. I forget what it is. When I was down at John of God's, there was a blind woman who was also happened to be paralyzed, and she could smell the healing entities that were walking through the populations there. She'd standing next to me, and she'd go, oh, here comes what's his name? Dom Ignacio de Loyo. Yeah, here comes Dom Ignacio. Dom Ignacio is coming. I can smell him. He's coming. I can smell him. And lo and behold, you'd see people starting to faint or starting to go into any of the many levels of expression that they would go into when they were being presented with an entity that was of a curative basis. And so the sense of smell is not without its own phenomena and not without its own levels of communication. We humanity, certainly in the Western, I should say Western undeveloped societies, because it's the development, the continuous development of the nose and our ability to scent things like a dog does, or like a cat does, or like animals in the jungle do, and like, say, people in the jungle do, the aboriginals of the jungle or the aboriginals of the desert. They can smell very, very, very well. It's only people here in the West that are unable to scent things or to sense things with the smell. So this does occur with Kundalini.
Thank you, Chrism. Next question. I've had a fifth chakra throat blockage since and during my awakening long ago. It seems as though every time I go to the ocean, I get a serious sore throat, especially since the last time. Is it the salt in the air that is trying to clear and purify my blockage at the same time hurting me?
Say again. Repeat the question.
I've had a fifth chakra throat blockage since and during my awakening long ago. It seems as though every time I go to the
Did you say throat chakra?
throat.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. It seems as though every time I go to the ocean, I get a serious sore throat, especially this last time. Is it the salt in the air that is trying to clear and purify my blockage and at the same time hurting me?
Well, yeah. That whole, when you have a virus or a cold, people are gargling with salt water because that has the ability to initiate alkalinity within the areas of infection, and some levels of alkalinity are good at releasing the proliferation of specific levels of virus. And the ocean air, I think, can be even just as helpful. Or detrimental. The salt in the air can be the tissue in that person's throat can be overly sensitive to the salt in the air, and maybe they want to stay away for a little bit and maybe go up into the mountains instead of the ocean. We have different physiological changes as we are within the Kundalini, and it's not always going to be the same. Now, I personally find a great level of detox when I go to the ocean. I like to go to the ocean sometimes and just walk. I usually bring the dogs with me, and then we just have a nice walk, and I breathe deep of the air. I breathe deep of it, and I like to feel it expand within me. And I love the smell of the salt and the seawater and the ocean on the rocks and the different smells that you can have there on the shore. I think for me it's very healing. For the next person, it can be very, very upsetting. And so I don't want to put this all in the same box. Okay, so this can be happy or it cannot be happy depending on that person's individual sensitivities. Over.
Can I just ask a question, Chrism, too,
Sure.
further on that? Sometimes a detox, a detox can be healing, yet a detox can also hurt.
True.
Can't it?
True
So,
enough.
you can, so within a Kundalini context, sometimes healing does hurt.
Indeed.
True?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hurt so good.
The next question. Well, yeah. Let it go, trust and embrace. All the unpleasant things happening in our life, including Kundalini hard times, to my opinion, is due to our interior fighting the process, fighting with life. What is your opinion, Chris?
Well, yeah, I remember this person. If they're fighting this, they're not surrendering to it. I'm not sure fighting with life is accurate. As a matter of fact, I think it's inaccurate. But resisting the process is going to cause problems. And, the more you resist, the more the process persists in giving you challenge that will cause you to resist. And so, it's important for people to understand that they must surrender. Like Brooke was saying earlier, you have really got to surrender to this process. You can't sit there and resist and resist and resist and resist. It's going to put you right into a frag. And I'm going to bring Brooke on and see if she has anything else she wants to say about that. Is that right, Brooke? You need to surrender, right? Oops. I don't think she's there anymore. I don't know. Are you there? And no. And what do you think, Centaur? I mean, you know about surrender. You've got to do it.
Yeah, Chrism, you have to do it. And if you resist, of course it persists. And not only does it persist, it gets worse.
Yes, it gets
and worse and worse. So you don't have an option, I think you don't have an option. I mean, you do have I think what we have is an option in how we respond. So we can choose to resist, or we choose not to resist, or we choose to surrender. And it's in that choice that the consequence happens. But in terms of, we can't make it go away by resisting. It'll never go away.
It'll
But
never
we
go
can
away.
choose that
Like you
option.
say, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
next question, my dear.
The next question is a dream, Chrism. This person says, I dreamt I was going on holiday to Thailand, but instead of flying, I took a train. I live in Ireland. On the way there, we stopped while we were journeying through a beautiful train track with very green vegetation all around. We got off the train, we were walking around, and I sat on the ground and realized there was a large grey snake coming out of the soil. Its coils were humped through the ground, kind of like the Loch Ness Monster. I like snakes, but this one scared me, and I couldn't see where it was going to surface next.
Yeah, that would be the Kundalini, especially the fact that it's coming out of the earth. You know, the Kundalini often comes out of the earth. I had very similar visions in specific dreams in my early part of the process as well, where there were humps the size of freight trains going out through a desert area, 2 of them. And I threw a stick at one of them to wake that darn thing up, and boy, did it wake up. It was a monstrously sized serpent. And it wasn't too thrilled about me throwing a big stick at it. And but yeah, that would be the Shakti Kundalini, and no need to be afraid at all. It's part of the deal. It's part of the process. Part of why that person is even on that group right there is because they have the Kundalini, and the Kundalini is telling this person that more is to come. Greater levels of transformation are to come. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. This is on the group as well. Master, I prayed for guidance from Divine Source and my Kundalini before falling asleep last night. I dreamed your K energy as pure as can be. In the dream, you had the ability to spin my crown chakra with your crown chakra. There was a young woman with you, and she looked at me and asked me if she looked old. I turned to her and replied no, but when I looked at her closely, she had reptilian skin. She was up to no good and didn't want anyone close to you in a jealous, possessive way. She grabbed my phone and was about to take it off me when 3 men jumped on her and got it back from me. I had 2 consecutive dreams of your pure energy and your ability to move other people's chakras with yours. Don't know the full significance of this dream or who it was meant for mainly, yourself or me? Question.
Well, yeah, definitely for her. The young woman, you didn't read the whole thing either. There's more to it. Yeah, there's more to that. The young woman had like tattoos and codes, tattooed onto her skin, and you know, she looked ancient and young at the same time. This would be the Shakti Kundalini, and of course, the Shakti Kundalini would not want anyone around me that was being overly possessive or jealous. It's such a waste of time. You know, these people, you know, competing for the attentions of the teacher and things of that nature. Just you know, wrong on so many different levels. And then, of course, the instruction about the cell phone and not using the cell phone so much, and certainly not placing it up against your head, because she was talking about the crown chakra and spinning the crown chakra. And the cell phone has a very detrimental effect when it's held next to the ear on the crown chakra. And so, of course, she would take that away from you. And yet, through the benevolence of the Shakti, she allows you to have the cell phone. She could, those guys, you know, I mean, if she wanted to, she could have just zapped those guys into nothingness. And yet she allowed them to take it, to return the phone to you, a trinity of humanity. And she allowed that trinity to return the phone to you so that you could begin to make alternate choices with how you use the phone. Not suggesting that this person is always sticking the phone up next to the ear, but you know, having the phone so constantly in proximity to the human crown chakra can be, you know, somewhat detrimental to the individual. So yeah, this was, and my ability to spin another person's crown chakra. Well, that's been going on for a long time now. I mean, a long time. That's not news to me, but it is. I don't feel that. I don't go up there and go, okay, I'm going to spin a million's crown chakra now. What I do is I'll look at whether a person's practicing the safeties or not. Then, if I see that they're practicing the safeties, well, then that shifts things into a different perspective. And from that perspective, bringing a person's energetic levels into a certain frequency can be done. But I learned long ago not to just zap a person into Kundalini awakening, because that can have hugely detrimental effects, not only on them, but on their family and on their friends and on the coworkers, if they're even able to keep their job after that. So I always look to see if a person is capable of having their crown chakra spun in a way that brings more Kundalini to them before I would ever do it. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. I'm planning to go on a shamanic journey to solve something that binds me. I cannot find a way to solve it myself, and it binds me on the emotional level. I will be guided by a professional. Can I go on a shamanic journey in a Kundalini process, or is it dangerous?
I wouldn't do that. I would find the wherewithal to unbind the scenario. You're not helpless. You may not have discovered all the different options that are there for you, but I wouldn't necessarily just go on a shamanic journey, especially if the shaman themselves don't even understand the Kundalini, which was another part of that question. That shaman doesn't know anything about the Kundalini, except what they've read in books, and that is not appropriate for Kundalini awakened people to take advice, certainly from the level of soul journeying, from a person that is not currently within the frequency of the Kundalini themselves. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. I want to stop identifying with my nervous system and its signals and learn to self-identify with everything. Where do I start?
Start by identifying with your nervous system and its signals. Over. You get
okay.
that? You don't take out a whole physiologic body of expression because you don't think it's serving you. Of course, it's serving you. And if you want to say you want to tie in with the all, well, the nervous system is part of the all as well. You don't just get to say, well, I want to take away my feet, but I want to walk around the world. How does that work? How does that work, Santara? You want to take away the feet, but you want to walk around the world.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the same way, that person is canceling themselves out by not wanting to identify with the nervous system. You've got to identify with the whole complete scenario. You don't get to take out one thing because you're currently using it. Maybe you just need to expand your horizons, expand your consciousness so that you can use all of the systems in a greater way rather than just depending on one. Over.
Thank you. There was a question as well about, it says, what is the name of the website mentioned in one of the radio shows called Kundalini Soul? I can't find it. I wonder if Elizabeth is there. Could she tell us the website address on that?
Yeah, well, it's www.Kundalini SOL. It's not SOUL, it's SOL. Like the other acronym.
Okay, Chrism, okay.
Like the sun. Not the other.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I thought it was soul as well because it wasn't sol.
Sol.
Pronunciation.
Kundalini
Yeah.
Assault.
Okay.
Yes,
Next question.
let me make sure. Hang on. Wait. Let me go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you there?
Yeah,
You listening?
I am.
Kundalini SOL, right?
I like that.
Right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just checking. All right. Thank you, my dear. Thank you.
Okay, next question. I had that experience where I became aware in my sleep and I was flying like a bird in a beautiful forest. Then I became to turn around an Indian man. He had a very beautiful face. Who was that man? Is he Shiva? I would like your help to interpret it if possible.
Well, could be any number of divinities. I would say it's an expression of the sacred male, something that was given just for you to give you a greater level of appreciation of sacred masculinity. You can call it Shiva, you can call it Buddha, you can call it Jesus, you can call it I don't know any of the current movie stars, so I don't know. But you can call it whatever you want to call it, and it's still going to be an expression of sacred masculinity. And I would, without knowing its name and without it presenting to you with a name, just give it the quality of sacred masculinity and let that ease your curiosity. Over.
Thank you, Chrism. They're the end of my questions. Are there any questions in the chat room?
No, I don't think so. I think people have been talking about lots
there
of
was
other
10
things.
questions there. Let me just
That's enough.
scroll down.
That's
there was
enough.
more. 12 questions I asked to imagine. Yeah, that's it, Chrism.
All right. Well, I think we should go ahead and call it a night, my dear. I want to thank you for staying up so late. I'd like to thank Manisha, if Manisha was able to stay up late. I'd like to thank Josephine calling in, and Joey and Santara and Mary Jean and the two guests, Atlanta's Secret Dream Master One. I'd like to thank everybody in the archives who are the future people who are listening to this program. I'd like to thank Elizabeth Dalton Gonzalez and Laranya, the Sacred Spider. I would also like to let people know where they can go to receive more of this information. You can go to Kundalini Awakening ! On Facebook, Kundalini Awakening Systems 2, Kundalini Awakening Systems 3, Kundalini Healing Public, Kundalini Healing Private, Kundalini Radiance Community, Kundalini People, all on the Facebook network. On the Yahoo network, we have Kundalini Healing and we have Kundalini Awakening Systems 1. We also have Kundalini Virgins. We have Kundalini Triad. We have many different groups on the Yahoo network. We also have on the Google Plus network, we have Kundalini Awakening ! And we're also represented on YouTube, Chrism.Kundalini on the YouTube network. And do you have any other announcements to make, Amelia, with regards to contact?
Yes, Chrism. Yes, I will. Well, what I'd like to do actually is give the two addresses. If people would like to make a donation, they can go to www.chrism-kundalini.blogspot.com, or you can go to the Safeties website, and that is www-kundalinisafeties.com, and there is also a PayPal button there, which is working really well now at the moment. So if people would like to make a donation, I certainly would encourage you to do so. It really helps. It allows so much to happen. Small donations are gratefully received. So I think maybe the easier one to remember is the Safeties one, www.kundalinisafeties.com. So if you can and if you want to, please go there and make a donation. So that's it, Chrism. I also have a Facebook page, which is Kundalini Matters what is it? Just Kundalini Matters on Facebook. And there's also a place on Facebook, Chrism's videos from Ireland, where you will see a collection of videos that Chrism has made in Ireland. They're not about Ireland, they're about the Kundalini, but I just gathered them all because they were made in that place, and they're all of different topics on the Kundalini and are very interesting. So I loved today, Chrism, that term that Elizabeth brought, Kundalini pod. Isn't that brilliant? I love it.
Yeah, I like that too. I also like
I do.
The website that Peter's put together called KAS1UK.com. So that's KAS1UK.com. You can get a lot of that information there. There's a PayPal button there as well, and you can get some of the latest writings there. And we also have Kundalini Awakening Systems 1.com, and that's one of the main websites there, and you can get a lot of information about the Kundalini there as well. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Rosemary and Joey and Elizabeth and everybody else. I look forward to seeing you next week. Same Kundalini channel, same Kundalini station, and I will end this episode the way it was begun. And here we go.
Hey Schatz, Lust auf eine Runde Stadt-Land-Fluss?
Okay, aber ich fahr.
Soll doch bei Ihnen für jede Menge Spaß. Das Skoda Dieselversprechen für Euro 6 Diesel. Damit sorgen wir dafür, dass Sie, egal was die Zukunft bringt, in Fahrt bleiben. Auch in Ihrer Stadt. Und das Beste, wer jetzt seinen alten Diesel gegen einen neuen Skoda Diesel eintauscht, erhält von uns einen Bye-Bye-Bonus von bis zu 7.500 Euro. Mehr beim teilnehmenden Skoda-Partner oder unter skoda.de/Dieselversprechen. Skoda. Simply clever.